Before we begin tonight's show, we want to acknowledge the tragic events that took place in Austin this weekend. Our deepest sympathies are extended to all those affected, including the families of Jorge Peterson, Ryder Harrington, and UT student Savitha Shan. It's a difficult moment to be an Austinite, but we stand with all Texans in our commitment to commemorate the lives lost and honor those who put their safety in jeopardy to save the lives of the innocent. If you are a student in need of assistance, the Campus Mental Health Center has resources available 24 hours a day. The 988 helpline is available for those in immediate crisis, and those in need of immediate response should contact 911. Thank you for sharing your time with us tonight. Now on to our regularly scheduled programming. Tonight on Tower Talks, we visit multiple UT labs to see how Longhorn researchers contribute to science. Tower Talk speaks to students about what their involvement is in research and what they think about UT as a research institution. Then we speak to a panel of faculty researchers to understand the diversity of research in STEM, humanities, and social sciences. Good evening. My name is Zion Tesfaye. We begin tonight's coverage with an update on current events at the 40 Acres. The University of Texas College of Liberal Arts has announced a major departmental restructuring that will consolidate several programs. 3 departments, French and Italian, Germanic Studies, and Slavic and Eurasian Studies, will merge into a new department called European and Eurasian Studies. The university will also combine 4 other departments, African and African Diaspora Studies, American Studies, Mexican American and Latino Studies, along with Women's, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, into a new department of Social and Cultural Analysis. University leaders say the changes are intended to streamline administration and encourage collaboration across disciplines. However, some students and faculty have raised concerns about how the consolidation could affect program identity, resources, and academic focus. The transition is expected to take place over the coming academic year. On February 19th, the University of Texas System of Board Regents approved a new policy changing rules for how faculty teach what it calls, quote, controversial topics, end quote. Board Chair Kevin Eltief said UT institutions must build, quote, breadth and balance, end quote, in the curriculum and determine when controversial material is required for a degree or offered as an elective. While the policy does not define specific subjects, discussion during the meeting referenced issues related to gender identity. The message passed unanimously. Several faculty members before the vote raising concerns about vague language and its potential impact on academic freedom. Student government elections at the University of Texas began today and will continue into tomorrow. This year, 7 executive alliances are running for office. Students can vote online starting March 2nd at 8 a.m. through 5 p.m. on March 3rd. The Election Supervisory Board has emailed the ballot link to students through the university email. Eligible students must log into Horn's link using their UTE ID to access the ballot. Votes are not counted until students click Submit My Vote at the end of the ballot, and selections can be changed any time before polls closed. In-person voting will also be available from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on the West Mall on March 3rd. Results are expected to be announced March 9th. When we come back, Tower Talks visits labs around campus. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Tower Talks. Our reporters went across UT to understand what research looks like on the 40 acres. Daniel Davila went to the Brackenridge Field Laboratory during their open house to see university's research facilities that exist off campus.
The Freshman Research Initiative is why I went to UT.
The Brackenridge Laboratory Field is dedicated to its research in biology, being important for the studies of biodiversity, ecological succession, and ecology. It contains 82-acre tract of land, including 9 greenhouses and 18,000 square feet lab space. Elizabeth Beam, a research assistant at the laboratory, first got involved with science and research through the Freshman Research Initiative.
Being part of the FRI program gave me so many opportunities. I got to do hands-on research. I went on to do the Freshman Research Forum.
Beam said she always knew she wanted to do research related to science and biology. It was one of the main factors that she looked for while looking at colleges.
And UT was the only one that specifically advertised undergraduate research.
It was also through the Freshman Research Initiative that she received her position at the BLF. The position allowed her to have resources to do study abroad research.
I ended up spending 8 weeks in Wales researching frog skin microbiome, which was so cool. And UT really is so unique in how many undergrad research opportunities it presents.
George Yetskovich has been working for over a decade at UT. Currently, he is a curator at the Plant Research Center on UT.
We are basically a museum of dried, non-living plants, each of which documents that a particular plant was growing at some place on Earth at a particular time.
During his time here, he has seen different types of research efforts in laboratories around UT.
Norma Fowler's lab in integrative biology has sent students over who are interested in changes in grasslands due to both, at the bad end, invasive exotics that invade the habitat, and at the good end, things like fire and other things that they use to regenerate the habitat and restore it.
Currently, UT is celebrating a Texas Science Festival, which started February 18th and will continue to the 5th of March. The BFL had an open house for the Austin community to spread awareness of their research.
And I'd really like to see the field stations do more of this kind of stuff where we involve the public and get people interested in what we're doing, because I think that's an important part of things too.
Carl Naba, a former worker at the laboratory, explains why having events like these helps the community understand what's going on in the fields.
Recognize the fact that we still live amongst nature and we're not separate just because we live in a city, and I think it's important, especially the exposure that I've seen a lot of kids around here.
In the end, the BFL wants people to understand the research going on and why it's important for the community.
I think a lot of times science can seem very intimidating from outside perspectives. I think it's really important for people to come here, get hands-on, and really see what we are doing here. Also, especially because when it comes to ecology, it is something that truly affects all of us.
Daniel Davila, TSTV News.
Tower Talks executive producer Kai Fong went back to the Brackenridge Field Laboratory to see their daily operations.
After the open house at the Brackenridge Field Laboratory, business returns to normal. For the researchers of the Invasive Species Laboratory, that means returning to their research on how to use natural ways to control invasive ants from South America in Texas.
Within invasive ants, we have 2 systems we work on. One is the red imported fire ant, and it's a biological control program.
They're kind of interesting,
for them
though,
using,
I won't lie.
forward fly parasitoids. And the other is tawny crazy ants, and a second biological control system using a microsporidian pathogen for tawny crazy ants.
These invasive ants damage the local ecology of Texas. They make it harder for native species to survive and shift the delicate balance of nature. They can also be harmful to crops. To a small segment of the population, a sting from these ants can be fatal if they are allergic to them. These ants are not only bad for the environment, they also have a negative economic impact.
Something like $6.7 billion a year are spent in economic costs related to the fire ant invasion, and that's both sort of damage to infrastructure and efforts to control them in agricultural settings. One thing that they do is they will move into switch boxes and electrical equipment and short out the connections, which then have to be replaced. So that's one. So electrical infrastructure is very sensitive to these kinds of invasions.
Dr. LeBron and his team go across Texas to study and control the size of these invasive ant populations. They use biological control to eliminate the ants with minimal impact than native ants. However, recent shifts in federal scientific funding have resulted in some challenges.
Affected us is that there are grant programs for which we were intending to apply that are not available as applications. So there was one that NSF program that I was going to put in an application for this year that is been archived because NSF is going through a organization-wide restructuring. So there's just fewer funding opportunities available than there used to be, and the ones that remain are more competitive. And then I had several contracts with federal entities to work through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to help preserve lands and endangered species outside of Travis County that are being impacted by these tawny crazy ants, and those have all dried up.
For TSTV News, I'm Kai.
While some Longhorns fight invasive ants, some faculty are preparing today's students to be tomorrow's scientists. Kai Fong has more.
I would say getting into BioBricks, you put on a great track to understand and learn a lot of stuff. Because before this, I had not had an opportunity to work in research. So all of the stuff here, like all the stuff in this equipment room was really new to me. So being able to have a detailed plan on how to understand research and how to learn introduced me to so many things.
In labs across campus, UT students are learning how to conduct scientific research. One of these labs is called BioBricks. BioBricks is part of the Freshman Research Initiative in the College of Natural Sciences. It uses molecular biology and biochemistry to do things like DNA cloning and understanding E. coli.
In BioBricks, what we try to do is, well, first students learn how to clone, like DNA, that codes for a protein of interest. And we want to express and purify these proteins to later test its activity on certain pathways that we're really interested in learning. And so in BioBricks, we utilize the E. coli expression system with the resources that we have so that we could express various proteins, such as some are human transcription factors, some are proteases that are involved in DNA repair. So all sorts manipulating the E. coli, expressing it and purifying it. So that's what BioBricks focuses on, is like extracting proteins where we have some ideas, hypotheses of how it might function. And we want to kind of put these puzzle pieces together to test in a out-of-cell setting to understand how it actually functions.
For many students, BioBricks is their first time learning how to do research in a laboratory. They learn skills that open future research opportunities.
To help these students prepare to be researchers, we do have a couple pre-med and pre-grad students that actually go on to faculty labs as well. So not only are we kind of teaching students how to be better researchers, giving them the basic techniques that they need, even if they don't move on to research, they do have that better overall understanding of research. But we also do produce scientists that do go on to faculty labs, doing their own independent research, publishing, having presentations, kind of reaching the larger scientific community as a whole as well.
To accomplish their research, the students of BioBricks use lab equipment to manipulate proteins and DNA. A lot of that equipment is very specialized. BioBricks offers student researchers an opportunity to be comfortable using expensive machinery in a learning environment.
Trying to find a happy balance of making sure we're very careful with everything we use, while also understanding if mistakes happen, we do have money to be able to afford to buy and like redo and replace other stuff.
Why do students like Jarek return as BioBricks mentors after their freshman year?
We always have a bunch of people in here, and while some people might think that messes up research, I think it allows for a more collaborative environment, because you have people over there trying to work on PCR, you have people working on SDS and Western blot, or you have people like me here trying to measure something on a sample or get some reagents from the freezers. So it's very loud, but in a good way. It's very collaborative.
For TSTV News, I'm Kai Fong.
When we come back, Tower Talks speaks to students how they are involved within research at UT and what they think about it. Tower Talks, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Tower Talks. Anish Tawari joins us now to talk about the undergraduate research experience. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Zion?
Doing well. For students who may not know what the Office of Undergraduate Research is, what is it?
Well, basically, it's a central campus resource that connects undergraduates with research opportunities. It provides a searchable database, helps students find faculty mentors, and supports them with funding and presentations opportunities across all the colleges.
According to an email obtained by the Daily Texan, this office, along with 3 other student support programs, will be shut down by the end of the spring semester. Why is that?
Well, that's right. So Executive Vice President and Provost William Imboden said the changes are part of an effort to create a more, quote, efficient, responsive operation, end quote. A university spokesperson said the services will be reallocated to individual colleges where they're most needed. So support is expected to continue, just in a slightly different structure.
What could this mean for UT students?
Well, the biggest change may just be accessibility. Right now, these programs serve students across campus in one place. Moving them into individual colleges could mean students having to navigate different systems depending on their major. And some students and faculty are saying that they're concerned about losing a centralized office that serves the entire campus. Critics argue that without a single hub, access to research opportunities could become more fragmented, especially for first-year undeclared students.
Absolutely. Is this part of a larger trend?
Well, it comes at a time when universities nationwide are restructuring administrative offices and reevaluating funding priorities. At the same time, though, there are broader conversations across the country about research funding, state oversight, and how universities allocate these resources. So while UT does say research support will continue, some do see this as part of a wider shift in how higher education is managed and funded.
Thank you, Anish.
Thank you.
To understand the student research experience, I went to Speedway to talk to Longhorns.
I think for international students, the options for funding are less compared to American-born students, and that makes it a little difficult. Even with American-born students, like my friends, they're also facing a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the funding that they're applying to. There's a lot of, it's not confirmed, but there's a lot of chatter about number of students who are selected for a certain grant, NSF or something, it's reducing the number of students who can get that grant. So there's a lot of conversations around that.
And also other people that want to get experience in other areas of research, they should be allowed to do that. And one of the main reasons I chose UT was because they are very well known for their research, so if they take that away, it kind of loses what they're known for.
I'm kind of just pissed off. If you're taking away the resources from underclassmen to get into research, then what's the point, If we cared about research as much as we cared about, athletics or sports and stuff, I think we would see a lot more innovation, a lot more happening.
Research does give a lot of opportunities to people who don't have access to family members who are already doing this kind of stuff. I come from a low-income background. None of my family does research. I don't know anyone who does research. I don't know how to get into those rooms with people who do research. And these programs are a great gateway for students to just be out there, get themselves known, or just see how it feels. So I think that they should definitely put more effort into funding and trying to make these unattainable rooms more attainable to students.
Students are the future of our country, and it's really important that people continue learning and researching and doing the most that we can do. And money, of course, is beneficial in that. So just continue supporting education, because education is the future.
To understand the student experience in Humanities Center labs, Tower Talks executive producer Kai Fong sat down with a student with extensive experience.
I'm currently in 2 labs. I'm in one of them. It's called the Caminos lab. So we look at how disparities in youth and minoritized youth, how that affects their outcomes. And then I'm also in the Graham lab. It's part of the URAP program. And we look at how anatomy museums have developed over time and how they've acquired bodies or subjects or preparations. Luckily, I am in labs where the subjects are kind of rotating, so I don't stick to one singular subject all the time. I mean, they kind of do follow format, so for Caminos, I do a lot of transcriptions, but we have weekly meetings where we talk about certain articles, and they rotate every week, so it's never boring. And then the same thing applies for Gram Lab. We do research on different people, so it's not the same person the entire semester. So we rotate also, and that's what keeps it interesting. It's kind of a lot. I mean, I would say for 2 labs in one semester, that's always a lot of work, but it keeps me busy. I really enjoy that. And, I always learn something new. I think it gives me a better perspective of things outside of my major and what I would normally focus on. I think it makes me a more well-rounded sort of individual because I'm not only focusing on like psychology and the pre-med classes, I'm kind of opening myself up to other things too. I feel like I would suffer from a lot of anxiety if I didn't do these labs. I feel like it gives me a perspective as to, what I want to dedicate myself to in the future. And without this lab experience, I feel like I would be more lost than not. I think at UT there's definitely a strong academic culture, especially as a pre-med. So that can be really difficult when you see all these people have internships and, all these lab experiences. And so during my time sophomore year, I was kind of stressing over that a lot, which is why I applied to a bunch of labs and ended up in the microbiology, department. And so that one definitely helped me kind of gauge that I didn't want to go into that type of research, but I still enjoyed the experience. That one, I definitely made a lot of mistakes, maybe like cleaning or, giving the wrong type of feed. That happened a lot in the beginning. And luckily, my lab manager was super chill and she was very flexible, and that's what a lab should be. Obviously within certain constraints. You don't want to be doing that all the time and kill the fish. Just email a lot of lab managers, maybe not the principal investigator unless you know them. That's definitely helped a lot of my friends when I've told them that they've gotten into a lot of labs that way. Make sure to keep yourself posted up with flyers. There's always flyers around campus. Don't think you're going to get paid. That's one thing. I did get paid for my first lab. The other 2 labs I don't get paid. But it's a good experience nonetheless, so keep your options open. Do things that maybe you would never think of doing. That's why I accepted the URAP thing, that's why I went into Caminos, but I enjoy them both, so.
Researchers to compare their experiences from across the 40 acres. Tower Talks will be right back. Welcome back to Tower Talks. To understand the variety of research at UT, I spoke to a panel of researchers from across UT about their research. Here's what they had to say. Closest to me is Dr. Arvind Ravikumar. Dr. Ravikumar is an assistant professor in the Department of Petroleum Engineering in the Cockrell School of Engineering. His research focuses on pursuing climate action using technology, policy, and social solutions. He is also a co-director of the Energy Emissions Modeling and Data Lab. The EEMDL uses datasets to accurately account for greenhouse gas emissions across the energy industry. To his left is Dr. Jorge Canizares Esguera. Dr. Canizares is the Alice Drysdale Sheffield Professor of History in the History Department in the College of Liberal Arts. Dr. Canizares' work focuses on the Spanish colonization of the Americas, the transatlantic transatlantic slave trade and the history of the Atlantic Ocean. To his left sits Dr. Jeffrey Coulson. Dr. Coulson is a part of the Arthur M. Blank Center for Stuttering Education and Research, where he is the Associate Director of Research and Grant Development. The Blank Center researches and provides treatments for individuals who stutter. According to their website, they empower individuals who stutter, quote, to stutter openly, speak confidently, communicate effectively, and advocate meaningfully, end quote. His research has focused on how phonetic and phonological factors affect stuttering. He also has done research into multilingual individuals who stutter. Now, to start off, I would like to ask Dr. Coulson to briefly explain what those two words and factors mean.
Thank you. As a person who stutters myself, it's always interesting to see how people attack specific words that may not be as familiar. And it's my pleasure to talk about the terms phonetic and phonological. Phonetic is basically the individual sounds in our language and how we produce them, and then phonological is the rules we use to put those sounds together. And there's been some interesting research in terms of how people who stutter take apart and put together sounds even in the absence of speech production. All that being said, that's kind of the underlying basis and just one part of the puzzle in terms of stuttering and how it's effectively treated.
I see. Thank you so much for helping us understand that. Now to Dr. Canizares, can you go over your role in the history department as the Alice Drysdale Shuffle Professor of History? What does all of that entail?
Okay, well, that is just a title for an endowment. There are many different endowments and many different titles. Mine is just one of many. What do I do in history? I do research on the history of the early modern period, that is 16th century Renaissance to the 18th century, the Enlightenment. So I cover like 3 centuries. And I look at the European expansion to the Americas, history of knowledge in particular. I am a historian of science by training, so I do history of knowledge.
Oh, wow. All right. Thank you so much. And finally, Dr. Ravi Kumar, could you give us a brief introduction of what kind of work that you do at the EMDL?
Sure. Thank you for having me here. My lab works on greenhouse gas emissions from across the energy industry. You know, one of the most important ways we can address climate change is to reduce our carbon emissions. But the way to reduce our carbon emissions is first to understand what our carbon emissions are. And so what our lab does is goes out to various energy industry facilities around the world and measures their greenhouse gas emissions. And then we come back to the lab, look at what we measured, and then think about what those measurements tell us about carbon emissions from the United States, as well as from around the world, and how can we develop effective policies to reduce them that keeps energy affordable, cost-effective, and sustainable.
Amazing. Again, thank you all for joining us today. Now that we have all of that cleared up, I want to go down the line. Everyone have a little go in more in depth about the subjects of their research. We'll start with Dr. Evan Kumar and then go down the line.
So one of the most important parts of addressing climate change right now is to measure greenhouse gas emissions from all economic activities. And so when we drive a car, we burn gasoline in our engines, and that emits carbon dioxide. And we know how much carbon dioxide we emit because we know how much gasoline releases carbon dioxide when we combust it. But there are sources of greenhouse gas emissions, which are carbon dioxide and methane, for which we don't have exact calculations of how much we are emitting across various activities. For example, landfills, which is where most of our trash ends up, is a large source of methane emissions. Methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas, but we don't really know how much methane is being emitted from landfills. And so what we do in our group is take various technologies. So we use satellites, we put sensors on aircraft, we put sensors on drones, and fly over these landfills and other facilities to understand how much greenhouse gases is being emitted from these facilities. So we do that on major sources of greenhouse gas emissions, such as landfills, coal mines, or oil and gas supply chain. We understand how much greenhouse gases these facilities are emitting and how do we reduce them, and work with governments and companies to think about what are the most cost-effective ways to address these emissions.
All right. Dr.
Yes, what do I do? Well, I've done many things. I've written 14 books. I just completed the last one that's coming out next month. Harvard University Press. It's called The Radical Spanish Empire, How Paper, Work Politics Remade the New World. And it's about the 16th century conquest. And it's co-authored with a former student of mine, Adrian Masters, who is in Germany, teaches at the University of Trier. And so we co-wrote this book. And it's about, it's a rereading of the conquest of the Americas by the Spanish Empire. The conquest is usually presented as three conquests: the military conquest, the few conquistadors that kind of defeated everybody, the Incas, the Aztecs, etc. There is the other conquest, that is a few friars that kind of spiritually conquered every indigenous people, or cowed them into submission. And the third conquest is the idea that the Spanish crown kind of control from the top down every aspect of the Indies. We are against that whole idea because, I mean, a few people, I mean, that is a myth. A few people, we don't believe in Santa Claus. A few people cannot conquer everybody, spiritually or physically. So our argument is that this empire came from the bottom up, not from the top down. And so we look at petitions mostly and the politics of paperwork, and we demonstrate that every conquistador was kind of defeated by paperwork. From Columbus, that arrived as a lord, and eventually returned in chains due to paper riots. We call it paper riots, that through petitioning kind of brought him down, and so too did Cortez, who lost all his power, Pizarro, and every single conquistador, and so too did the friars. Paperwork led to lots of political participation from the bottom up, a form of democracy in an empire, what we thought it's completely autocratic and absolutist. And so we are looking at the emergence of politics from the bottom up in the Indies, that it's much earlier than that of the British in the 17th century, before the Parliaments of Virginia or before Massachusetts and the Puritans and the participation in local politics. We say you look at the origin of democracy here in Spanish America in the 16th century.
Interesting. All right.
Fascinating. So on a different note, even this is incredible. So at the Arthur M. Blank Center, our focus is understanding what stuttering is and what stuttering is not. And I think that's a very important point. It's a complex problem, and it's not even a problem if you look at it, and I'm going to use your word, if you reread what we know about it and what's actually been confirmed. It's often viewed through a very narrow lens because the precise cause, people feel there's no known cause for it. There is, it's just not the cause that people immediately jump to. It's not nerves, it's not a lack of intelligence or confidence or things of this nature. And if you listen to people who stutter, they will tell you that. And one of the things we do at the Blank Center, which informs our behavioral research and our clinical research, is we listen first. And we listen to the parents of children who stutter, the kids and adults we treat, and they will tell you, don't tell me to try harder, don't tell me to take a breath, don't finish my sentences for me. None of that helps. And to make sure that that is put into the hands of kids who stutter, and make sure that they are okay telling the world, here's what stuttering is and is not, and make them the experts in the room, because really, they often are.
Absolutely.
But in the absence of any knowledge, because there is a lot of misperceptions about stuttering in the media, in social media, and politics, everywhere. In the absence of genuine understanding of stuttering, a child or a person will just accept the stigma and internalize it. And that does more damage than the actual stuttering itself.
All right, now we have a wide range of different types of research here at this table. When we talk about conducting research in your respective disciplines, I want to establish the similarities and differences between what this word means to you in your different fields. When you talk to your peers about research, what does research mean to each of you?
This is a great question because now I routinely have undergraduate students from UT come and ask about doing research in the lab. And the first thing that we always discuss is, do you know what research is, or what in your mind do you think of research as? Um, to me, at a very fundamental level, research is observing the world around us, right? Each of us will pick very different topics on what that means. In my case, I look at climate change and carbon emissions from around the world. And when I say I look at what's happening around the world, I read about what other people have found. And so we learn from others. We look at what people that came before us and working on this topic have told us. And then we try to figure out answers to questions for which we still don't have answers. And so when, as an engineer, we apply the scientific method to these questions. So we first start by saying, this is what I think the answer is to this question. And I'm going to go and test if my hypothesis is correct. And sometimes you're right, and many times you're wrong. And if you're wrong, you go back and figure out, okay, what mistake did you make? Why was the answer incorrect? And how can we improve that? And that's how you do research. You build piece by piece, and at some point you give the torch to the next person that wants to do it.
Excellent question, and I agree with all you said. Essentially, research is a building an argument, an interpretation that begins with a question. And the significance of that question, the so what, why are you asking that question? And that question has to be built, unlike opinions, not through, it has to be empirically based, it has to be supported by evidence, and it has to be falsifiable. That is, it has to be peer review, unlike social media in which you can say whatever. Your argument or your interpretation goes through peer review, goes through expertise by outsiders or peers that vet whether what you are saying is actually solid, it's empirically rigorous, and the argument is significant. And that is research. It's kind of like any form of knowledge in academia, in engineering, everywhere, in chemistry, you begin with a question. And a question that leads to answers that have to be empirically based. And arguments that are logic, so there's the rigor of the argument that follows a logical structure, but that is essentially vetted by outsiders. It's not social media, it's not opinions. For opinions, we go to bars. For arguments, we come to the University of Texas and get trained. And there are good opinions. Opinions, everybody has the constitutional right to have opinions, but not everybody has the constitutional right to have arguments. Arguments are good or bad, and you can grade them. There are bad arguments, F arguments, and there are very good arguments that are A arguments, and that's why you come to college.
I get the benefit of working with humans and having them come and express their own story through their own lens. And it's an important part of research that I think may be underexplored in a lot of areas, is that the arguments that you're making and the questions that you're coming up can come up organically from the people that you want to benefit. And sometimes what is being said results in a question, results in a program of study, results in a treatment approach that can be confirmed, denied, altered, changed to meet the needs of whomever's involved. And I think that human basis to it really does give it weight. And my hope is that, like you said, that the data doesn't get lost in belief. Because once the data starts to mount in one direction, you may be pushing against beliefs that don't necessarily have as much data behind it. And perhaps, if you've been examining something like stuttering for years and years and years, which is a very old topic of investigation, but it has never really moved the needle down the road in terms of stopping a person from stuttering, or really even changing their life in a consistently positive way. So if you look to another question of maybe that's not where we should be looking, maybe we shouldn't be shooting straight at the fluency, and maybe focus on the whole person. The 27 other behaviors of communication that we neglect because we are always focusing on just the stuttering. I mean, you hear me stuttering now, but there's also a lot of things you can do to communicate and connect.
Absolutely.
And those can actually override any stuttering, no matter how severe, as our research has shown.
Well said. It's really impressive how research, which is such a broad term, can be taken into so many different aspects. And with all of these three research that we have here at the table, so outside of your own discipline, what are your experiences with research and other researchers at UT?
I think some of the most interesting conversations I've had at UT has been with researchers from completely different fields. I know what I try to do, and it gets really hard at UT, is that there's so much going on around campus.
Absolutely.
And the first difficulty is finding out what's going on before it actually happens. Often I find myself in situations where someone tells me about an interesting event that they attended last night. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know this. I could have attended that event, right? So I think UT affords a huge amount of opportunity for me personally to just go talk to others and find out what they're doing. So I ended up, this was a very interesting story because I was trying to find a building on campus, just like I was trying to find this room today. And I ended up at the law school. And then I met someone who had known before from an event, and we just ended up chatting. And that resulted to the semester where I invited that professor from the law school to come and talk to my class in engineering, because there are very interesting synergies between law, the study of law, and the work of engineering. And I would not have been able to do that if I hadn't found myself lost in the law school here at UT. So I think a lot of these serendipitous meetings that we have has been very helpful. Another example is I'm part of this faculty writing group that UT organizes, and this just puts faculty from various departments together to just sit and write together. And it's been a wonderful experience because I meet people from history, from linguistics, from other engineering departments, and it's been great knowing what others are doing.
Absolutely.
Could you repeat the question again?
Yes, the question.
I was enthralled by you.
You're all good. What are your experiences with research and other researchers at UT?
With my own research, wonderful. I'm supported. I have wonderful graduate students, doctoral students, which are it's a collective endeavor. I guess in all disciplines, but in my discipline, though it seems to be a discipline of authorship, one author, is still a collective endeavor. It's a community that exchanges ideas, in which you are confronted by questions by others, in which the vetting process also opens up your imagination. So it's a process of communication and dialogue always. Not only when reading others, because you're constantly kind of reading what others have done, they argue, but also when you have colleagues and graduate students that are in a dialogue, in a perpetual dialogue. So that is my experience, but also the exposure to others is wonderful because, for instance, I belong to a committee that is the College Tenure and Promotion Committee of COLA, College of Liberal Arts, and I love that process. Even though it's a lot of work, we have about 30, 40 promotions and tenure cases every year, and you have to stay for 3 days almost. Yeah, 3 days, in which you, from 8 to 5, you go over these files. But the exposure to the research of many others, linguistics, economics, philosophy, etc., that are outside my own field, which I don't know much, it's always a revelation. So I enjoy learning about all these wonderful things and how the accomplishment of faculty in these universities is just striking. Right. The kinds of things people do and their national reputation, international reputation. This is just a freaking awesome university in terms of research.
That it is.
I think, as you can see, just the experience of consuming research and the experience of talking to a researcher is very different. And I would absolutely encourage anybody who can encounter or encourage researchers to talk about their own research, do it, because it will come alive. And I think we get the benefit of having so many great researchers here, that you feel and see why they're doing what they're doing, and in a way that wouldn't be communicated um, as quickly or as effectively in print or in graphs. And we, so our department is Speech Language Hearing Sciences. That's a very broad department. We cover a lot of different ground. We go from stuttering to aphasia to swallowing disorders. So we have a very wide, diverse group of clientele, and so that gives us a great benefit in terms of perspectives on what we do and in different settings, at different stages in life, how other people handle stigma, how other people handle what's a difference versus what's a disorder. Because there are diagnoses we have in our past, in our field, that were diagnoses at one point and now they are just differences. And so that is an inherent benefit of what we do, but the broader family of UT, we get the benefit of being in the College of Communication, which is an unusual pick for our field. We're typically in the department or in the College of Social Sciences or Allied Health or something like that. So we get to explore through the lens of mass communication, how does something like stuttering push through those lenses, and how can we help people who are on the other side of that camera and computer and screen to not get the messages that we know aren't true and actually stick with you longer than any they stick with you longer than they should, and then become the narrative no matter what. So we get to go into a room that has cameras and green screens. We get to demonstrate, here's what we do, here's how much we do love to talk, and to talk to the researchers reminds you why you did this in the first place, because people always have a personal reason why they started this.
Absolutely.
And that heart in the middle of science isn't trivial. That's why people do it in the first place. That's why students come to us. It's not just because they want a notch on their resume. It's because they're actually genuinely, earnestly interested.
Well said. All right. Sorry. No break? Okay. This semester.
I think at the end of the day, research, undergraduate research especially, is something where you have personal and close contact with faculty. And so what I advise all of the students that I teach is, just go to talk to the professor. Most professors, I can guarantee you, at UT really like when undergraduate students want to come into their office and talk to them about getting started on research. One of the great things, at least personally for me working with undergraduate students, is that they don't come with preconceptions. They don't come with this body of knowledge that they already know, that their mind is set on that's true, and that it's going to be harder to change their minds. A lot of the students come with a completely blank state. They're ready to learn, and they're willing to do the hard work of learning how to do research. And I think the best thing students can do is go talk to faculty as early as you can. Talk to them, learn about what they do, find out what's interesting to you, and try it out. You have 8 semesters here in college if you are getting a 4-year degree. So you have 8 people to go and try research with. The more you try, the more sense you get on how to do research and what parts of it you like and what parts of it you don't like. In addition to talking to faculty, there are a number of other opportunities at UT, including summer research programs. There are awards for this. Certain colleges have their own programs. And the College of Engineering has a summer program on AI. So there are lots of different things you can get involved in. But the first step to all of that is knocking on someone's door and talking to them about it.
Absolutely.
Yes, I mean, the difference between a community college and UT is that those who are teaching in UT do research, and they are introducing their own research into their teaching, and that is important. For me, the key thing is that with undergraduates, I teach them that my discipline is a craft. It's like learning how to do carpentry. It's not just, I mean, you read a book on carpentry. You have to do the desk. You have to build a thing. Otherwise, you don't know the discipline. So it's a hands-on thing. And so it's more the practice of doing research. And the practice of doing research includes, in the case of history, being exposed to, asking questions, having hypotheses, testing those hypotheses with evidence, finding the evidence. So you have to find the evidence. Go to archives, go to books, go to online, making sure that the evidence is actual evidence. That is not social media, that whatever you're drawing from online is not the opinion of somebody who is posted. That is not evidence, right? So it has to be reliable. How do you get reliable evidence? And so on and so forth. And then the building of the argument. You have to create, it's not just assembling evidence, you have to create an argument. An argument has a logical structure. How do you build that logical structure? You have to have introduction, then a body of evidence displayed, and then the conclusion and the point of writing paragraphs, have topic sentence, you have transitions. So it's a logical equation that has to be, you have to do it. I cannot just relate to you how to do it. You have to do it, right? And so too with everything else. And then it has to be vetted, which is research. You have to have peer review, and so it's either the professor or your peers that kind of make sure that you are not, that is not bullshit, or it's not just whatever, plagiarism, that is, or artificial intelligence, that you're able to articulate to the questions of others answers, right? Which is one of the things that we have to be aware of now with artificial intelligence, that people can produce what appears to be kind of solid arguments, but in fact it's not theirs. So that is a problem. And so I think there's presentation of arguments, defense of arguments in front of people. It's a kind of a way of making sure that people are not relying on these shortcuts that are artificial intelligence.
It's important to realize that even though the undergraduate program got shut down, the people who use that program are still here.
Absolutely.
And all of the professors who were plugged in to that program definitely want undergraduates to come and ask questions. That's what we did. That's what we did early in our lives. And undergraduate studies are the lifeblood of what we do at the Blank Center. Courtney Bird and I, Dr. Courtney Bird, who's the founder of the Arthur M. Blank Center, in 2016, because there's not many people in the world of stuttering who specialize in the world of stuttering, I think it was with an undergraduate co-author, actually published a paper looking at the factors that encourage people to go into this field. And we learned that one of the three main things is exposure at the undergraduate level. Exposure to people who stutter and exposure to a dedicated course in stuttering. So that's what we did. And the undergraduates in our program actually conduct the clinical research that we are publishing on. That's the most experiential learning you'll ever get, and more than you might get in many graduate programs. So it is not just going into a professor's door and asking a question can lead to systemic change. So don't be afraid to do it. We like talking about our research, and we want to involve you. And even if there's not a centralized location to do it, just email us. We might have full inboxes, but be patient, and we will get back to you.
Amazing. Election Day is tomorrow. Election Day is tomorrow. Tower Talks producer Audrey Itz joins us now to talk about where to vote on campus. How are you doing today, Audrey?
I'm doing good. We've been having a really good show tonight.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow is Election Day in Austin. This primary election gives voters the chance to pick the party nominees for the November general election across federal, state, and local offices. On the ballot includes nominees for U.S. Senate, Texas Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, Comptroller, Railroad Commission, State Legislature, and judicial seats, as well as local county offices such as commissioners and judges. In the Democratic U.S. Senate primary, candidates including James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett are competing to advance to the general election. On the Republican ballot, Senator John Cornyn faces challengers, including Attorney General Ken Paxton and Congressman Wesley Hunt. If you still need to vote, polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. across Travis County. Voting locations on the University of Texas campus include the Texas Union and the LBJ School of Public Affairs. Near campus, students can also cast their ballots at the Travis County Civil and Family Courts facility, the Austin Recreation Center, and the Travis County Clerk's Office. Travis County is a county-wide vote center system, meaning registered voters can vote at any polling location in the county. Voters should bring an approved form of photo ID and must be in line by 7 p.m. for their vote to count.
Thank you, Audrey, for informing us all about tomorrow's election. And thank you for joining us tonight. To watch this and all future Tower Talks episodes, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram at towertalks@TSTV to stay updated on Tower Talks. For Tower Talks, I'm Zion Tesfaye. Good night.